Thank you so much for joining us here at YDS for our first interview for our fall series of colloquia.
Good morning to you. I am delighted to be with you.
Thank you. This particular interview is being sponsored by the Office of Black Church Studies Certificate Program, and we are so pleased that you have gifted us with your time in this way and really have a great expectation of what you will share with our students both today and in the actual colloquium. I know you're the
I'm
founder
looking
of the,
forward to it.
thank you. I know you're the founder of the Community Healing Network here in New Haven, and the network has been intentional in mobilizing resources of care that are attentive to the impact that the lie of white supremacy has caused on the Black community. Would you tell us what caused you to found the Community Healing Network? And in so doing, can you tell us just a little bit about the trajectory of your life that brought you to that moment?
Hmm. It's so hard to know. As I've looked back, you end up in places. You think that you're planning your life, and then you look back. You reach a certain age, which I think I've reached, and you look back and you realize your life has been planned for you, and that the decisions have been made from forces above you, which I'm very grateful for, actually. Um, so I was born in Panama, uh, the Republic of Panama, on the Panamanian side, not on the Canal Zone side, of West Indian grandparents, Barbados, Grenada, Jamaica. And my great grandfather, Samuel Aline, was a loyal follower of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Uh-huh.
And when I think about why I am compelled, as Nina Simone says in one of her speeches, I am compelled to do the work that I do with regard to my community, I I I blame or give him credit.
Yes.
I think that that is in my DNA. My love and passion for Black people is, I think, boundless. My preoccupation with their concerns, I cannot, I really feel like the spirit of Ubuntu, that I cannot be me, I cannot be well
Mhm.
as long as my people are not well. And
Yes.
so I think that it comes from that level of DNA. And then
Mhm.
there are experiences that you have.
Yes.
Um, from my earliest years, I remember my grandmother, who I loved dearly, my Barbadian, well, two grandmothers were Barbados, but my maternal grandmother was very, very clear that there was colorism and that she believed in it. And I passed muster with her. My brother did not. He was much darker than I was. And because I loved my brother so much, I couldn't understand that. That bothered me tremendously. So I think that, starting pre at the DNA level and then at the elementary school, early
Mhm.
childhood level, those are things. And then, as I grew older, um, these things just continued to bother me. I didn't understand, because I love Black people so much. I didn't understand when people didn't.
Yes.
Um, so I think that there are a number of things that I could point to. Those instances, I can point to being in a Chinese restaurant one day with a young lady I was mentoring, and the young man behind the counter clearly added up the order in his head. And my young friend said, "Did you see that?" I said, "Yeah. What do you mean?" She said, "He's so smart. It's a well-known fact that Chinese people are smarter than Black people." And that hit me so hard. Um, that's something I remember as part of my journey of wanting to figure this out. And then the one that I tell most often is being in a nightclub in Washington, D.C., and meeting someone because she was so active. It was a very small club, and she was so active interacting with the band. Her name was Dee Dee, because they knew her and everybody knew her. She was
Yes.
um, spending a lot of time drinking and, fun loving, etc. And at one point, my friend and I went into the restroom, and she was there looking at herself in the mirror. She was oblivious to our presence. And she said, "Here you are, Dee Dee, old, black, and ugly as usual." And
Mm,
that really hit me like a dagger. And
mm,
I think that is the place where I just said, I got to get to the bottom of this. And so spent a lot of time reading, rereading Miseducation of the Negro, really
mhm.
refamiliarizing myself with Garvey's work, and feeling that we have been being, as a people, called to do this work for a very long period of time. And so what we tried to do is simply put together an infrastructure to do what what Garvey talked about, what Woodson talked about, what Biko talked about, and taking the mind of the oppressed back from the oppressor, essentially.
Yes.
Um, so that's could go on, but that's I hope enough to give you a taste of why I do what I do.
Thank you so much. Would you tell us a little bit more about some of what I think is the signature work of a community healing network, and that's with the emotional emancipation circles or the response Ubuntu healing circles? Can you tell us a little bit more about them and perhaps even share with us the general structure of one of those circles?
Well, the way that we see this work, it's kind of like a journey. If you go to our website, you'll see We're Escaping, Come With Us. And so we're inviting people to come with us on this journey from our present state to emotional emancipation, which in our understanding is complete freedom from the lie of white superiority and Black inferiority. So we see the two as very much linked. Black
Yes.
inferiority does not exist in the absence of white superiority.
Hmm.
And we talk about superiority more than we talk about supremacy, because supremacy often seems like, people with the white hoods and all that.
Mm.
Superiority and inferiority is something that is in the air that we breathe. From the moment we're born into that. And so we like to pay attention to that subtlety. But anyway, so we invite people on this journey, and it starts with an invitation to take the pledge to defy the lie and embrace the truth. Defy the lie of white superiority and Black inferiority, embrace the truth of Black humanity, because we see this as a quest for
Yes.
our reclaiming our place in the human family from which we were thrown out by the telling of the lie 600 years ago. The next step along the journey is participation in community healing days, which is on the third weekend of every October. We just celebrated it recently, designed to put time for healing on the Black community's agenda, the top of the agenda, recognizing that that is something that we really need to do if we're to move forward as a
Hmm.
people. Then there are the Ubuntu Healing Circles, rapid response Ubuntu Healing Circles, designed to just create spaces for healing as people need them. And then emotional emancipation circles are a much more structured curriculum, self-help support group process that has been developed in consultation with the Association of Black Psychologists. And what it is a place where we can breathe,
Hmm.
where we can share our stories, where we can really deepen our understanding of historical forces and how they've shaped our sense of ourselves, our relationships with one another, the health and well-being of our community. Um, our situation is not an accident. It's all part of the telling of the lie and how that lie has infiltrated every system in the world, and the global mind, and it lives within all of us as people of African ancestry, and as everybody in the world. Wherever you sit on the hierarchy of humanity as defined by Europe over the last 600 years, it affects us all. And then we sponsor Valuing Black Lives Global Emotional Emancipation Summit to bring people across the diaspora together to focus on this lie as the kind of the root cause of our problems wherever we are, whether it be Brazil or Sweden or even Ghana, where the skin lightening is an issue, a serious issue, and other parts of Africa. And then finally, we've got a Breathe Baby Breathe podcast designed to really share what we see as the path to healing, the values of Africa, um, sort of uninterfered with by the West, the we value system that um, that Africa stands on versus the I value system that the West stands on.
Mhm. Thank you so much. And given the kind of work that you have been doing, I've been wondering, um, in this particular season when there is so much blatant display, of white superiority, what you're seeing in our communities that might be of concern to you.
Oh, everything, everything, everything. This is a very difficult time. It's of concern in because there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anguish, there's a lot of death. COVID is, as everyone has said, has exposed in a very profound way all of the disparities and the divisions. But those have been here for generations. They've been
Yes.
here for 600 years. And we as a people have been coping with them, surviving them, and sometimes thriving in even the midst of them.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things that doesn't concern me, but really I feel very strongly about is the need to help us all connect with the strengths of our ancestors, connect with the divine force that is in us, that is around us with our God and our ancestors for strength in this moment, as they did in their time.
Yes.
And the understanding that whatever we may be going through, we are going to make it through. Um, it's a very difficult moment. But for me, I see this as a time where the values of the West that have held sway for so long, 600 plus years, since the start of the transatlantic trafficking in human beings, um, those values are really being held up as
Hmm.
incredibly unsustainable.
Yes.
Unsustainable. And somebody when in Florida, I was on tour one time, maybe about 3 years ago, and someone described it as the kicks of a dying jackass. What we see right now,
Mhm.
but they hit hard, and
Yes.
they last long. So it's going to be a difficult period. But what the pandemic has shown us is that the we value system that is so foundational to Africa and to human beings, because remember, um, Africa is the origin of the space in which all of human beings um,
Emerge.
arise.
Hmm.
Right? It's where human beings originate, and so I think we're being called back to that value system. It
Hmm.
is absolutely essential that we do that as a human family. Otherwise, we just don't survive.
Hmm.
So I believe that this work that we're engaged in is not as just for us. It's for us to regain our understanding of who and whose we are and the value system that we carry and we're responsible for in order to be of service to humanity.
Thank you. And that kind of leads me into you've almost answered my next question, which is your audience is going to be primarily Div students, some of them on the brink of graduation, and they are going to be preparing really for healing ministries in the church, beyond the church, in various organizations. And I was going to ask you how you see the work of Community Healing Network really resourcing them. And indirectly, you've answered it, but I'll give you the platform to say more if you wish.
So yes, it's fundamental healing work, and to the degree that we're engaged in work with Black people, um, mm, addressing the lie is of fundamental importance.
Mhm.
Every human being who is of African ancestry, born over the last 600 years, has been born into a world that profoundly devalues our lives. Every human being, no matter where we've been born on the planet, including in Africa. And the first thing I think about when I say that is how amazing are we? That even with the weight of that lie, even with that disadvantage, um, the amazing things that our forefathers and mothers have done, amazing things.
Yes.
And so that, for me, gives me all the strength I need to keep going on and engaging in what may seem to be this kind of quixotic adventure, because I know that we will be able to do so much more, and our children will be able to do so much more when we're free from this lie, when
Hmm.
we've freed ourselves from the lie. Um, so I do think that ministry to Black people, to people of African ancestry, must necessarily address this question of the lie, of healing from the lie, as of first importance. And then I do believe that we have something, God has not brought us through all of this for no reason. I have no idea what it is, right? But I know that it is for a very high and noble purpose, um, because that's the way God works. So I know that there is a role that we have to play as African people in essence, saving the human family.
Hmm.
And in order to do that, we have to be back in our right minds. Denzel Washington in The Great Debater talks about putting his students back in their righteous minds.
Ah,
And so the emotional emancipation circle, which is kind of like, it's like an AA. In fact, Bell Hooks quote, that she in Rock My Soul, Black People and Self-Esteem, she talks about needing spaces like AA for critical consciousness where people are. And that was part of what inspired me personally to
okay.
think about developing the emotional emancipation circles. And so what we do there is try to get back into our righteous minds, try to understand what has happened to our people, how we got here, um, and figure out what we need to do to get back to our ourselves, back to our minds unoppressed, our minds not driven by the narrative that's written for us by other people, but to how do we rewrite our narrative? How do we understand ourselves as the amazing human beings that we are, like every other human beings on the face of the earth, and not less than in any other way? And what does that mean? And we also believe that Africa and African values are very, very important. Ubuntu and Sawubona are kind of our watchwords. Ubuntu being I am because we are. I cannot be me without you. And Sawubona, I see you. I see you at the level of our ancestors. I see you at the level of our children, at the deepest sense possible. My appreciation for you is boundless. And so we spend a lot of time at Community Healing Network working with those two concepts
Hmm.
so that we appreciate ourselves in the fullness of our humanity.
Thank you. You actually indirectly alluded to what I'm going to ask as my final question. And I suspect that there's some who would ask, how does the work of CHN bring God's shalom to all people, to non people who are of non-African descent? And isn't that what we should be thinking about in this time in terms of bringing people together? What's your response to that kind of question?
Well, I think it's a wonderful aspiration. One has to address all the brokenness in order to make that possible.
Hmm.
I do not think that it's possible, for example, to have interracial healing without intraracial healing.
Uh-huh.
So that it's very important for us as people of African ancestry to do our own work so that we don't show up in rooms feeling inferior and, you know, try to do interracial healing. That's just not going to happen. Similarly, I think it's important that people who have been taught to feel superior do their own work
Yes.
to level themselves to the point where they understand that they're just human and not superior before they can come into a room and try to do interracial healing, right? We have to change ourselves, our group within our groups in separately in a sense, before we can hope to come into a room together with the possibility as equals in terms of talking with each other and reaching some semblance of healing. Um, so I think that this is a necessary step along the road to shalom. As long as some part of God's family is broken, and it's not just about the African family, it's many places need to be healed
Yes.
in order to move us along that road. We're doing our part. We're very clear what our role is. Um, our assignment to ourselves is, not healing everything in the African diaspora, but really just honing in on what we see as the most powerful weapon ever formed against us as a people, and that is that lie. Once we deal with that, once we figure out how to get rid of it in every system, which will take a while, first and foremost, getting it out of our minds and our spirits, and then we'll be able to go off and do something else. It's not going to take 600 years, though. It's not.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. You
My
have
pleasure.
given us great food for thought and given us a great preparation for your time coming to share with us. I anticipate that it will be a significant healing time. And
I'm
so
really
thank
looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to the interchange, the exchange with young people and hearing their perspectives on our situation and hoping that we will all emerge with a great deal of hope and a great deal of expectancy, because this is a moment where things are dying and things are being made new, and we've got a really crucial role to play in those things being made new.
thank you once again. Again, we're looking forward to seeing you next week and to facilitating and hearing all that you have to share with us. Thank you.
Thank you.